Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the PG Show, where we talk about all things college football. Today, we got to kind of recap what happened in week 11 with, again, just another stellar week of college football, games across the board. The Pac 12 is doing Pac 12 things, and I am joined today by Drew England. How are you doing? Tell the people where they can find you.
Oh, hey, what's up? Always good to get on here. Drew England, at coach underscore England one on Twitter. I am the host of the Underofficial Review podcast. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, our YouTube channel, all that stuff. You can catch us. We do one or two episodes a week, a recap, preview type of show like PG does, and always love talking college football. I'm a huge OU fan, but we talk college football across the country, every game, just about all the big games, all that stuff. So we have a good time doing it. But once again, thanks for having me.
No, yeah, it's always great to have you guys on. And Jay from Unfair Sports will be joining us here in a little bit when we get to talk about OU. But there is one game that we need to start out with, probably one of the biggest games of the week, and that is TCU versus Texas. So TCU comes out of this one victorious 17-10 in a full-on defensive battle. And this is a game that you and I this is a point that you and I and Ty talked about a couple weeks ago, which was we saw the Big 12 about 10 years ago really start to make the transition in college football towards this offensive game, right? And everybody thought the defense in the Big 12 sucks. The defense is no good. What have we seen over the past couple of years? More games like what we're starting to see now, where the Big 12 is starting to play better defense, but also when they go out of conference, they can light anybody up, which both Texas and TCU are able to do. They're able to play with the best of the best. And so when we watch this game, when we see Texas get their only touchdown from the defensive side of the ball, and you see a 17-10 game, this is not what a typical Big 12 fan would remember seeing from any of these games. Quinn Ewers looked not very good again. You know, I think he went 17 of 39, 171 yards. Didn't throw for a touchdown, but did throw an interception. And the TCU defense was able to hold Bijan Robinson to 29 yards in this game. So
2.4
TCU defense was
yards per
stellar.
carry. 2.4
Yeah, that's
yards
awful.
per carry. His biggest rush of the night was 9 yards. We talked about it on our show today. If you guys want to go look and back of that, me and Zach did a recap on a lot of these games. But yeah, man, that was the biggest, almost not really shocker, but I thought, coming into this game when we previewed it last week, I thought Bijan Robinson would be able to get it done on the ground, and the Horned Frogs defense, man, they held Texas to 199 yards of total offense, man, and that was that was the telltale. No points scored in the first half, other than TCU's field goal. I think it was like 3-0 at halftime, and then like you said, it actually was a 2-touchdown game there late in the fourth quarter, and then the fumbled snap there led to a Texas defensive touchdown. But I mean, TCU pretty much had this game in the second half. Obviously, they had the field goal, but yeah, they pretty much owned the line of scrimmage and created havoc for Texas's offense. And on the flip side, Texas's defense held TCU and that high scoring offense down. So you got to give credit to Longhorns defense too, for sure.
Yeah, and I think we got to talk about this acquisition for TCU, which I think has been a pretty well underrated acquisition for TCU, which at the beginning of the season, they get Sonny Dykes as their head coach. And I think a lot of us looked at it and didn't expect TCU to be, I definitely didn't expect them to be 10-0 at this point.
No.
But they were able to go out there and get Chad Glasgow as their defensive coordinator, which, listen, he's ran some pretty decent defenses in the past. And I necessarily wasn't a believer in TCU having as great of a defense as they've had up to this point. But listen, only allowing 377 yards a game, TCU might be able to go compete in the playoffs. Am I crazy for thinking that?
Yep. You are loco. We talked about it on our show today. right now they're a legit contender, obviously, because they're undefeated. But man, I don't know how they would stack up against some of the bigger teams. And I've certainly been wrong before. I'm not perfect, but right now I don't know. Um, Only being able to score 17 points against Texas, I know Texas is pretty decent, but if you're struggling to score 17 points against Texas, you're going to struggle to score points against Georgia, Ohio State, some of those type of teams. So I mean, we'll see, but right now I don't know if they quite have the firepower um, to to stand up to the big boys yet. But you never know. You never know. That's why they play the game. So
Yeah, they could definitely go out there and surprise everybody. But listen, is Max Duggan just that dude? Like when I go and I watch TCU and I watch Max Duggan go out there and I watch him play and being able to get the ball to Quentin Johnston, is it more Quentin Johnston just being able to get out in open space and being able to make those tough catches, or is it Max Duggan being able to make the tough passes and being that tenured senior leader, or just maybe a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both, man. I just and we were. I mean, obviously there was question marks of if Quentin Johnston was gonna be able to even play in the game. We were talking about it the other day, but also having the ground game that that Miller he ripped off about 140 yards for TCU, and that helps out a lot when your run game can get going like that, and it creates one-on-one opportunities and things in the passing game for an already really good receiver. He only had three receptions, but 66 yards, and averaging almost 22 a catch, and then a big touchdown there, the 31-yard touchdown for him. But I think it's a little bit of both. I think Max Duggan is just a gritty dude that a lot of people are just sweeping under the rug and saying, "Oh, well, we've seen him do this and do that," but it doesn't mean you can't change, and doesn't mean you can't better yourself. And I think he's gotten better this year. He's kind of owned his role, and yeah, he has him 10-0, so it's hard to argue against what Max has been able to do this year.
Okay, so let's kind of pivot a little bit, still talking about the TCU Texas game, but kind of pivot more into the Texas side of things. So this was a huge recruiting weekend for them. They had 5 stars up and down the board across Deuce Robinson there. You had Anthony Hill. I mean, they had 4-star galore with, wide receiver DeAndre Moore, who's currently committed to Louisville, who you're hearing potentially is a silent commit, right? Marcus Deal, Jelani McDonald, Justin Benton, Jaden Greathouse. And we look at this massive recruiting weekend in Texas potentially not being able to put it together, going 6-4, 4-3 in the conference, definitely doing better than Oklahoma is this year, but we'll get to that one here in a little bit. I look at the rest of the schedule for the Texas Longhorns, and I'm really thinking here that Texas is potentially in trouble because you get held to 10 points and no offensive touchdowns by TCU, and you have to go play at Kansas, at Lawrence, Kansas, where we know the Kansas Jayhawks, they're going to show up. They're going to be loud and rowdy, ready to show up. This is also a team that Texas has historically struggled with. Then you have to end your season. Yeah. Well, and we expect Jalen Daniels to be playing in that game. And then you have to end the season with Baylor. And we know Dave Aranda can definitely be able to stop Steve Sarkisian in this offense. And after what we've seen from Quinn Ewers, I don't know. I don't know if Texas can go out there and win their next 2 games. And that's saying a lot because Texas was starting to maybe look good, maybe look like they were kind of getting it together. And their second half woes have completely killed them. What's your thoughts on just where Texas is going to go for the rest of the season?
I mean, it's hard to really tell because that was one of the reasons why I was a little reluctant to pick them, and why I picked TCU to win on Friday was their ability to just show up in big games and to win. Yeah, Oklahoma State game, like you saw there, close loss there. Kansas State was another big opportunity for them to show up and win. They did that, and then TCU trying to create a pattern of winning. Everybody's going to talk about the close win to or close loss to Alabama, but then you also got an overtime loss to Texas Tech on the schedule, and some other things that are some head scratchers. A close win against Iowa State, stuff like that. For me, they have to create consistency, and they've been able to consistently recruit really good, but consistently bad in developing that. And obviously the turnover head coaching and stuff like that. And hopefully Sark can you know keep laying the foundation, keep doing that. But yeah, these last two games for them is no walk in the park for sure. And you know, can they go 2-0? Certainly, but can they go 0-2? Yeah. I see more of a split, to be honest. I think they and now I'm not going to say which one they'll lose, which one they'll win, but I think they'll split these last two and end up with like a 6-6 record, or even 5-6, or whatever, 5-5 record, something like that.
Listen, I'll say it with my chest. They're going to lose to Kansas next week. At Kansas, Quinn Ewers doesn't play well on the road. This just seems like the perfect storm. And in a season where they thought they were going to bounce back against a team that has given them troubles, it doesn't look like you're going to be able to bounce back against Kansas. It's not that easy walkover game that a lot of people have thought they've had in the past.
And that crowd is loud and proud, and they've shown up this year to some big games. Obviously, they played TCU really close too, so they're going to be able to take a little page out of TCU in that film that was just put out there. And they'll, like you said, Jalen Daniels will be back at quarterback. They'll give Texas a run for their money for sure, like they always have the last 2 years. And Texas is 0-2 the last 2 years against Kansas. So
yeah, no, they definitely will. Okay, I want to get into our next game, Alabama and Ole Miss. So I was not going to lie, after the OU game, I disappeared for a little bit and watched Black Panther. But I walked out a couple times because the AMC movie theater here at Quail Springs has a TV at the bar. And even though I got a cell phone, I just kind of wanted to see what was going on, grab some popcorn, some candy. And to my surprise, Alabama was down by quite a bit when I went out there. I think it was 17-7 or something at that point. I get out of the movie. Listen, Alabama's won this one 30-24, but then I go back and I look at the replays, and Ole Miss had every opportunity to be able to go out there and win this game.
Yep.
If it wouldn't have been for Judkins to be gassed at the end of it, my gosh, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin could have got the upset and put Alabama with 3 losses. Listen, Alabama fans at that point would have been just like OU fans are right now. They would have think the world's falling apart. Nick Saban's got to go. So we watched this game, and I've asked the question over the past couple of weeks. But I want to pose a question again, and I'm going to keep bringing it up. Even though they got the win, is the Nick Saban dynasty, as we know it, over? Because I don't see this Alabama team continuing to go out there and be the Alabama team that they have been in the past, winning national championships, competing in the SEC championships year in, year out, competing in the playoffs. Am I crazy?
Not crazy. No, it's not. It's not a crazy question to ask. Will they still win ball games? Will they still be 9, 10, 11 win teams? I think so. Will that dominance of 6 or 7 national championships and the consistency of making the college football playoff every year still happen? I don't know. That's, I think, the biggest question mark. A lot of it hinges on, how long is Nick Saban going to be around at Alabama? They're still going to be able to recruit. They're still going to be able to do their thing there. Jace McClellan is emerged a little bit this last week. He's starting to carry a little bit more of the load too, in that 1-2 punch with him and Gibbs. Bryce Young, did his thing and made some plays on the run like he normally does, and he's starting to settle back in as the Heisman Trophy winner. But man, Bill O'Brien, I think, is holding them back a lot. His play calling, I don't know, man. I don't get some of it, but that's one thing that Alabama has experienced over the last couple of years is assistant coaching turnover, so I mean it's hard to say, but I think that they're not going to be as dominant, but they're still going to be able to make some noise. And another team to look out for, obviously, and we'll probably talk about them here in a minute. But LSU, man, and them, getting a win and getting into the SEC championship in Brian Kelly's first year, they're another one that's going to be able to recruit down there. They're in a hotbed. They've got some great coaches on that staff, and they're going to be able to. I think you'll start seeing them contend. I think Arkansas, they're still building some stuff with Sam Pittman over there. Ole Miss certainly is not going anywhere as long as Lane Kiffin is there. And it's just the SEC West, and I think the gap has closed. I don't think it's Alabama and everybody else in the West that is so far apart. I think you're starting to see that gap kind of tighten a little bit, and you're starting to see 3 or 4 teams that are starting to emerge and starting to make a strong case for. There's going to be a new SEC West, champion, obviously, because LSU has gotten that one. So, will they hold it? Can they continue to do their thing? They're going to be able to recruit. So, look out for LSU. Auburn, we'll see what they can do with a new head coaching hire. That's going to be a big deal. But, I don't think the level of dominance at what Alabama's used to is going to continue at that pace.
Yeah, and this is in no means, I want to make this point very clear, I am by no means saying that Alabama will not go out there and win 10, 11 games a year.
No,
by no means saying that Alabama will not.
That's why I said I think the gap is closing a little bit. They're not. It's not A, and then everybody else just way underneath them. I think the ladder is getting shorter for them, and other teams are climbing it, and they're nipping at their heels a little bit.
Yeah. Now, and I think a lot of this, and a lot of people overlook this. I think a lot of what we're seeing with Alabama and the SEC is the SEC has a lot better coaches than what it did when Nick Saban started, which is a testament to what Nick Saban has been able to do. Because when you look up and down the board at all the coaches in the SEC, a lot of them have came from Nick Saban's tree.
Yep.
At least a lot of the elite coaches, right? Yeah. You have now Brian Kelly at LSU, which has been one of the best coaches in college football. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. You have Shane Beamer at South Carolina, which I know people are probably going to be like, what? Listen, Shane Beamer is going to be a good coach, and he's going to be able to get good guys out there at South Carolina. Kirby Smart. You now have, and I'm totally blanking on the Florida guy's name right now. Oh, Billy Napier.
Oh, Billy Napier.
Yes. And then, of course, Jimbo Fisher has at least done stuff in the past, and he's been able to beat Nick Saban. So I guess throw him in there. But listen, the SEC definitely has elite level coaches across the board. And this is a part of the reason why you start to see Nick Saban falter a little bit more, even in his own conference. Because when you get better coaching, the recruiting gets a million times better. And it becomes a little bit harder to maybe scheme than what it was in the past in game. So,
well, I think you're starting to see a lot of these people, and especially these recruits, starting to feel like more like, hey, I want to try to knock off Alabama. I want to be one of those teams that plays against Alabama. And I think you're starting to see some of those guys want to beat Alabama sometimes more than maybe they want to go to Alabama. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about, and I didn't have this one on there, but I want to talk about Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, because we've talked about it multiple times throughout the year, but this has just been a complete and absolute dumpster fire. There is no better way to explain it. I know OU fans want to get all up in arms. They want to get all up in arms about what's going on here at Oklahoma, but listen, Texas A&M fans, they're in a lot worse shape than OU fans are.
Yep.
You heard about a potential rumbling with him and a player. I can't think of the kid's first name, but I know his last name is Muhammad. He was not able to go out there and play last game. He was benched, quote unquote, and he said it was because he was wearing arm sleeves. Jimbo said it was just because of some internal things that were going on. You hear of players getting suspended, and it was because they broke team rules, and then you hear from things in the media saying, hey, it's because they're smoking pot or something in the locker room. Who would have ever thought Texas A&M at the beginning of the season would not be going to a bowl game? Currently sitting at, what is it, 3-6 or 3-7, and they're not looking good. It's not looking good because Auburn was one of those games that you looked at and said, okay, they fired their head coach. Auburn's a dumpster fire as well, maybe even a bigger dumpster fire. So you should be able to go out there and beat them. Nope. Auburn comes out there and beats them 13-10 in another defensive battle, or maybe just a poor offensive performance by both teams. And I think Texas A&M has some things that they can build on with Connor Weigman, and you've got Evan Stewart out there as a receiver. You got A-Chain. There's a lot of good things for him going on, but it doesn't seem like Jimbo is able to put it together for him. And I really have to be asking myself if the Texas A&M Aggies higher ups are even considering that $89 million buyout for Jimbo Fisher, because you just landed the #1 recruiting class and you haven't been able to do anything with it. Because you're 3-7, and now it looks like you're at best going to be able to go 4-8, because you sure as hell are not beating LSU in that final game of the season. So maybe you beat UMass, maybe. I might have to give you that one, but I mean, what's going on with Texas A&M? What do you think they do? What direction do they go? Because $89 million is a lot of money, and you've heard people say it on Paul Feinbaum's show, but it's cheaper to hire a hitman than it is to fire Jimbo. So
yeah, Texas A&M, man, it's crazy. It's how you pay somebody that much money to coach football and to not get results the way they have is just unbeknownst to me, because I was looking at a stat and I don't have it. I was trying to find it, but at this point in their tenures, with comparing Jimbo and Kevin Sumlin had more wins at this point in his career in the 4 or 5 years he was there than Jimbo Fisher, and Kevin was not making nearly the amount of money that Jimbo is making. If you really stop and think about this for a second, what has Jimbo Fisher really accomplished on his own, and what has he really built other than inheriting a huge pool of talent from Bobby Bowden on that 13 national championship team at Florida State, when you had, Benjamin, you had, a bunch of these guys, a bunch of talent, Jalen Ramsey, Freeman, Jameis Winston, all these guys. I mean, PG, you probably could have won a national championship with that talent. He coached under Nick Saban at LSU. What has he really done on his own? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. But yet you're going to pay this man however much money, a guaranteed contract to Texas A&M. Yeah, they better, the higher ups better start having these conversations. And if they don't win their last 2 games, or at least, be somewhat competitive against LSU, I think you have to start seriously considering parting ways and getting those get that big oil money for some buyouts down there, because it's been 5 years. Yeah, you've got a great recruiting class, but doesn't look like you're developing them much. And you're supposed to be this quarterback guru. Haven't had a really good quarterback since Jameis Winston, really. So, yeah, if I was the people at Texas A&M, I would seriously be having these conversations, and I think that some are already starting to occur. So,
yeah, and I look at it, and I look at the complete anarchy that is going on within that locker room for Jimbo Fisher, because I want to read a tweet here from you guys, and I was actually able to find it pulled up. The kid's name is Moose Muhammad III. Mm-hmm. He's one of the receivers. He literally tweeted out last night, "I want to clear the air. I was benched for wearing arm sleeves, something that my teammates and opponents wear frequently for protection. I apologize to my teammates and fans for looking forward and I'm looking forward to getting back on the field. If you're Jimbo Fisher, how are you? Hold on. How are you benching a guy for wearing arm sleeves? One, but two, how are you letting something like this get out? It makes absolutely no sense to me. If you're a booster and you're the higher ups that be at Texas A&M, you cannot have the complete anarchy that is happening within this program, and then potentially losing a ton of these players after the season. And I looked it up. His buyout's $85.9 million.
Yeah, and there's going to be, let's be honest here, there's going to be a massive exodus to the transfer portal after this season, and that's going to be another factor for these for the higher ups to consider at Texas A&M is, yeah, you're recruiting them, but you're not keeping them. So that's another factor that's going to be against Jimbo. And so I don't see how you can keep him around unless you can't afford to buy him out, unless they don't have as much money as they say they do. So,
well, and we've talked about it, and you've heard Jay say it specifically, but if you go and you buy out Jimbo for $85.9 million, and then you go hire a new coach, you're probably going to have to spend at least $50 or $60 million on your new head coach, because no head coach is going to come in there and take that job for any less than what Jimbo is getting paid. You've now set a precedent that you are going to pay your head coaches that much
well,
money.
especially if you're going to go try to get a guy who's, I mean, there's obviously a lot of coaches that are better than Jimbo Fisher, but have a better track record than Jimbo Fisher, and try to pull them away from where they're at now, because that's going to be the situation that you're going to find yourself in, is you're going to have to lure one of these guys away from a big program to come coach with that kind of money. And yeah, you're going to have to throw a lot of money at one of those coaches to even have them consider leaving wherever they're at, because if you're A&M, you got to go after the top dogs and settle for nothing less.
Yeah, so we're talking a little bit about what A&M should do if they were to let go of Jimbo Fisher. There's a lot of college football jobs across the space that are available. One of them's Auburn. You've got Nebraska. You've got Arizona State. You've got Georgia Tech. You've got Wisconsin. Lots of great jobs out there, and there's potentially more on the horizon. You've heard a lot of big names be thrown out there. You hear of Matt Rule, who was recently let go from the Panthers. Scott Frost, who was let go from Nebraska this year. You hear of Urban Meyer, which I don't know why people still want him, but And then, of course, you hear the one name, Deion Sanders. Now, there are two jobs in the country right now that really intrigue me and where I want to see who a coach goes to. It's Nebraska and it's Auburn. Who do you think gets the Nebraska job, and who do you realistically think gets the Auburn job?
Nebraska is kind of an anomaly, because they're a big, proud program with winning tradition, and they got some money to spend. They've got good facilities, things like that. They're going to have to attract a blue collar type of coach, like a Lance Leipold, like somebody like that, the guy at Kansas, one of those guys who is a foundational building coach, because that's the only way that Nebraska is going to be able to be turned around. You're not going to get, I don't believe a big name coach is going to get that job, because that's not what is required right now. Somebody who is going to roll up their sleeves, go in there and set the groundwork. One of these type guys that Matt Campbell, maybe somebody like that, who is certainly a good coach, but not a quote A-list coach, I would say. So I look for somebody like that to get a job. Gary Patterson would be a great, I think, addition to Nebraska. I think he's one of those type of guys that could go up there and shake some guys around. Hank, I think, just said that too. That's a good take there. But as far as Auburn, I have a theory on this one, and I'm gonna kind of go with my buddy Zach, who does the podcast with me. He says that James Franklin will leave Penn State and go to Auburn. Yes, he does have a contract there, but and then he thinks Matt Rule will take the Penn State job, because Matt Rule has ties to Penn State, and that's his alma mater and all that stuff. So that would be an interesting hire. I think James Franklin getting back into the SEC would be interesting. Matt Rule could very easily take the Auburn job. But yeah, those are the kind of names that I would see with Auburn, because I don't know. I don't see Deion Sanders. I don't see one of those type of guys taking that SEC job just yet.
See, now here's the thing. That James Franklin one makes a lot of sense because what has James Franklin done at Penn State?
Yep.
Nothing, right? He has nothing to show for his time at Penn State outside maybe a Rose Bowl. So that's an interesting one. I haven't thought about that one. That's pretty good. I do think if you're Auburn, you have to throw a bag at Deion Sanders, and here's why.
Well, I think they've already tried.
Throw a bigger bag at him.
Yeah.
Because here's why. Deion Sanders is going to attract talent wherever he goes.
Yep.
Hence why Travis Hunter is at his school right now, right?
Yep.
If he goes to Auburn, my God, Auburn's going to be a top 10 class in 2024. Hands down.
Yep.
He's going to be able to attract that much talent. And I think that is worth paying him in and of itself. And we've already seen what he's been able to do out down there at Jackson State.
Yep.
So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, and I think Auburn really has to be able to go after him.
It's not, but I think where Deion Sanders is going to land, and I've said this for as soon as the job opened up, I think he's going to land at Georgia Tech because of his ties to Atlanta. He'll be able to recruit that area. He knows that area. He played professional sports in Atlanta for the Falcons, for the Braves. He's pretty much an Atlanta guy. Like he those guys and that talent around Georgia, he would have Kirby Smart, shaking a little bit because, like you just said, he'd be able to recruit some talent out of the Southwest, and having a team like that, he could go into the ACC, be a contender, and there wouldn't be huge expectations put on him at Georgia Tech because they're already at the bottom of the barrel. The only way that is to go up from there, and I don't think that they are they're wanting to win. They're wanting to bring a guy in there and saying you have to win a national championship. I think it'd be a good Power 5 job for him to start at. He'd be able to recruit, and I think he could definitely contend with the way he's been able to coach and recruit in the ACC. I think that'd be a great first big job for Deion Sanders.
That would be interesting. I'd be interested to see if he could take over the ACC. I do want to touch on Hank's point about Gary Patterson because I have talked about the potential move of Gary Patterson from Texas, which I would want. I want Gary Patterson to move on from Texas.
Yeah.
Because the longer he's there, the better that Texas defense is going to get. But it's always been my philosophy that defensive coaches are hard, or defensive coordinators, really good ones at least, are really hard to come across. Either they don't leave the schools that they are at, or they don't get fired. And so I feel like it would be hard. Like they have prime opportunity to be able to go in there and grab a defensive coordinator that is going to be able to give you a top 25 defense every single year. And then go out there and hire an offensive coordinator from somewhere. Go out there and pay, $5 million for an offensive coordinator, which I know is outlandish to pay a coordinator that much. But if you really want to get on the right track and you're serious, just go do it. Why not? Yeah. Go steal somebody's offensive coordinator. Or I've thrown this out there, and I know people are going to just jump on this. You thought about hiring Urban Meyer, so you've opened this door. Why not try and give Art Briles a second chance? So he's going to get it eventually. And I know of his past and his history. You could put a lot of stipulations on this. You could, literally, like you could make it to where you get out of that really quickly. But a Gary Patterson and Art Briles team could turn that Nebraska program around really quickly. Now, How is the recruiting and everything going to work with Briles? I'm not sure. But you open the door with the Urban Meyer conversation. So I'm going to potentially bring that up is you could go do it. And it would be successful. I think it could be successful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like with college football itself and the way things shake out. You seemingly think that all this stuff is going to happen. This team's going to win. That team's going to do this. This is going to happen here. but then, you basically can set that plan on fire and it go completely the other way. So that's the beauty of college football, and no scenario I think is impossible at this point, and it'll be fun to see how all this coaching carousel stuff shakes out for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard anybody ever say this before, but I am definitely ready for the off season. I'm ready to see all of the recruiting things that are going to happen and
And
all of the
early
transfer
signing day is
portal.
right around the corner too, so that's gonna be fun.
I'm
So
so excited. I'm so
yeah,
excited.
no doubt.
Okay, next game up that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the Pac-12 a little bit because the Pac-12 just keeps doing Pac-12 things, and it just makes no sense to me. This makes no sense. It just seems like they don't want to get to the playoffs. So now your best hope is USC, which, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not super confident in USC being able to win out here and go to the playoffs. Now, if they're sitting at 12-1, the committee is going to have no problem at putting USC in the playoffs. But next week they have to go to UCLA, and then they have to end their season at home with Notre Dame. This was a really bad week for the Pac-12. I mean, all of the teams that you wanted to win and that they thought should win, Oregon and UCLA, they lost. UCLA lost to Oregon, or UCLA lost to Arizona, 34-28. Oregon lost to Washington, 37-34. What do you think about the Pac-12? Because I'm a little baffled that they continue to do this to themselves.
Yeah, I think like you said, I think USC now is the only shot that the Pac-12 has at getting into the playoffs, just because of the rest of their schedule and their resume sets up well, because then they would have played some two really good teams, and then obviously a Pac-12 championship if they got there. But then you'd be putting them against a one-loss Tennessee, and then that's another conversation. But yeah, it's the Pac-12 doing Pac-12 things, like you said, and yeah, Oregon. I knew we talked about that game, and it was going to be a tight one. I thought it would, but I thought Oregon's ability, you have two guys that rush for over 100 yards in this game, and your defense seemingly just lets you down. That seems like an OU recipe of years past. Where you have a really good offense and your defense just can't get a stop to close the game out. But yeah, I don't know if any one of those teams, even if they got into the playoffs, could line up. We saw Oregon at the beginning of the year lose to Georgia. But yeah, regardless of what happens, I don't think a national championship is going to come out of the Pac-12 anytime soon. So.
Yeah, so let's look at USC, because I think this is going to be an interesting topic over the next couple weeks, and I think something that a lot of people are going to be watching. And I know I got to watch myself to not talk about USC too much, or else people are going to be able to riot. But
yeah, as long as you don't bring up the name associated with USC, I think you're good. So
yeah, we won't bring up He Who Shall Not Be Named. We'll give you all a Harry Potter reference there.
Yeah,
but I do want to bring up one guy for USC, and that is Caleb Williams, because I mean, my God, this man is just a bad dude. He is a bad dude. And I don't understand how he's not being talked about a little bit more in the Heisman race. Sure. But they beat the Colorado Buffaloes 55-17. Now, the biggest headline in this game is they lose Travis Dye for the rest of the season.
Huge. That's a huge
loss.
Yep.
And this is time for Raleek Brown, who was committed to Oklahoma, to show us who he is and make his name known. Because, again, we talked about it. You have 2 games left. You have to play UCLA, who is still going to be a top 25 team. And then you have to play Notre Dame, who is a top 25 team.
Yep.
I want to see what they look like about those games. And honestly, I think USC probably splits it. But I could see a scenario where USC wins both of them and wins the Pac-12 championship and is sitting at 12-1, looking at potentially a college football playoff berth. Where do you think USC potentially could finish the season? How do you think they're going to finish those next 2 games?
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and I was going to bring that point up as well at the same time. But can their backup running backs can they carry the load now because Dye is going to be out for the rest of the season? Can a guy like Raleek Brown step up? It's not gonna really matter too much, I don't think, because they have the type of offense that can get it done and don't lean heavily on the run game. But as you get into bigger games, certainly if you make the playoffs, you're going to be able to have to run the football. But their offense right now, I don't think is the question mark. I think, and it seems like it's almost the flip the script, and it's almost like talking about Oklahoma under Alex Grinch is can they get enough stops on defense? Like I said, I think they can win these last two games, certainly, after looking at UCLA losing to Arizona. But then again, it's the Pac-12. You never know what's really going to happen. And then that Pac-12 championship is going to really be the telltale for USC and to see if they can really solidify themselves as a legitimate playoff team. I think the jury's still out, but I certainly think they have enough talent. I'm going to call it like I see it. To get to the playoffs, but I don't think they can stack up, against a Georgia or a Ohio State when they have to match up, or even a Michigan, a team like that in the playoffs. I think they're going to get handled at the line of scrimmage and get exposed in some areas. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, like I said. So these last 3 weeks will be a really, really interesting path for USC.
Yeah, and USC, listen, they're better on the defensive side of the ball than people really want to give them credit for. And I know it's because they play in the Pac-12, but here's the deal. We talk about OU's tackle for losses and how great that is. USC has gotten to the quarterback 32 times this year. They've acquired 15 interceptions, not 52 interceptions. Geez, that would be incredible. I mean, this USC team, they cause havoc in the passing game. I mean, am I crazy to think that they could go 12-1 and end up in the playoffs?
No, like I just said, I don't think it's a crazy theory to think or anything like that because of the schedule they play. But at the same time, could they definitely lose one of these games or maybe a couple of them? Certainly. But, you're talking about a Pac-12 conference who's pretty good, but obviously not to the level of the SEC talent that you see week in and week out. And I think that's where and even the Big Ten, and credit to the Big 12, because I don't think the Big 12 is getting enough talk about how good they play defense and how good just some teams are this year there. But, USC certainly can make the playoffs for sure. But like I said earlier, you're going to have to debate USC and Tennessee with each one loss there at the end of the year if Tennessee can get it done, because they won't be playing in a conference championship. And so you're going to have to weigh those two teams out. And then certainly what could happen between, a one-loss Michigan or a one-loss Ohio State, because they play each other there as well. With no one of those, whoever loses will not play in the Big Ten championship. So then you've got another one-loss team there that you're going to have to debate if other things happen. Georgia stays undefeated, stuff like that. So there's a lot that still can play out in these scenarios, but it's going to be fun to watch, and that's why I love college football. So,
yes, I want to move on to the next topic, and we can cover this one really quickly, and that is the ACC. So the ACC had themselves another pretty good day.
Yeah.
They have now solidified what their ACC championship is going to look like. It's going to be the Clemson Tigers and the North Carolina Tar Heels. So you're going to have Drake May going up against a quarterback questioned program in Clemson. I guess we can put it that way.
Yeah.
DJU is still the starting quarterback, which I get why Dabo wants to keep DJ as their quarterback, right? He's led them to the winning streak that they're on, or that they were on. They're 9-1 sitting on the season. Listen, this is probably one of the more interesting ACC championship games that I'm going to potentially watch in a while. What do you think about the Clemson Tigers in North Carolina? Who do you think realistically is going to come out of that ACC championship game here in a couple of weeks?
I'll be honest with you. If you're asking me who I think is going to win the ACC, and I had to pick right now, I'm picking the North Carolina Tar Heels, and I'm hitching my wagon to the freshman Drake May. This dude is thrown for 3,412 yards, 34 touchdowns, 3 interceptions as a freshman. This kid threw for 440 yards against Wake Forest. He continues to be impressive. He's going to find himself in New York. The kid's 6'4", 220, and can sling it. Man, the last several games he has done his thing, and not only that, he almost has 600 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns. I don't know how he's not the front runner for the Heisman Trophy, but I think North Carolina with the schedule that they have coming up, they can find themselves in the obviously they're going to be in the ACC championship game, but the remaining schedule for North Carolina is you got Georgia Tech, should be a win. North Carolina State at home, that's a good matchup that you'll have, a rivalry that you'll have there, and then certainly Clemson there in Charlotte. But man, I like the Tar Heels right now. I think they play good complementary football, and they're just kind of flying under the radar with still one loss. And that's another team that the committee is going to have to take a look at the end of the year too, with all these one-loss teams vying for seemingly that last spot in the college football playoff.
Yeah, they're going to screw North Carolina out of it. Let's just be honest here. I do agree. Drake May is playing that well. He could go be a Heisman finalist, but they're not going to give it to a freshman that's not at Alabama, OU, or Ohio State. So,
which is it's a damn shame, because that kid is deserving of it. And if he goes out here and continues that pace and throwing for the yards that he does the last couple games, because he's going to have some big games here coming up, and if he does it, then I think it's an injustice on who's voting for the Heisman Trophy. So
no, it is. Strip them of their rights.
Right.
Let's talk about the game that everybody here wants to talk about. I'm going to do it to you. I'm going to make you do it. So I know
I was hoping we could go the whole episode without even talking about this. I just erased it from my memory. But
we could go the whole time without talking about it, because it seems like the chat's done a pretty good job about talking about Oklahoma.
I just tried to ignore that side of the screen. So
listen,
let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's do this.
Let's start by saying this. For anybody that wants to say that Brent Venables should be fired, he isn't a good coach, you can just go ahead and leave. You don't have to watch my videos, because you are wrong. You are wrong. Okay? The deal is they had a 42% roster turnover. 42%.
Not more than that.
Well, you're talking about scholarship guys. They had a lot of walk-on guys still here. So 42% of their scholarship guys transferred out. And then you had a lot of new guys come in, whether it was through the transfer portal or in the recruiting class. We haven't seen a ton of the 2022 recruiting class yet, which is expected to not see a lot of true freshmen.
Mm-hmm. Hold on. Let me get this here. Hank, I'm going to debunk your little theory here on the pre-transfer portal and everything like that. So if we didn't have the pre-transfer, if we didn't have the transfer portal, or if we didn't have the NIL, then those players that went to USC and got in the transfer portal would still be at Oklahoma, and Brent Venables would be able to use those guys, and it would be a far better situation that Oklahoma would be left with. So that theory right there, it makes no sense to me, because you just disproved your own little logic there. So sorry I had to get off on that, but it makes no sense. You're using that as an excuse for roster turnover and everything like that. But So if there was no transfer portal and no NIL, then the cupboard wouldn't have been so bare for Brent Venables and his staff in the first year. So sorry about that.
And here's the deal. OU fans are going to have to be okay with the cupboard being bare this year as well.
Yep.
Because here's the problem. When you watch what we watched and witnessed on Saturday, and you watch what we've witnessed this season and what OU has put out in losses, there are guys that have to go out of this program. I'm sorry. I've talked to a lot of the players. I love some of them, but they are not guys that are disciplined enough to play in the system that Brent Venables and Jeff Lebby want to play. Am I wrong? Am I wrong with that statement, Drew?
You're not wrong, and it happens all over college football. So this is not an indictment on any player at OU or anybody like that. It just sometimes it's not the right fit for guys, whatever the case may be, and that's part of football. That happens at any level. Whether it's kids playing pee wee football. Hey, mom, I'm just not cut out to play football, or whatever the case is. Junior high, high school, all that stuff, and sometimes you have to you have to go your separate ways. You have to go find a place that fits you. I think certainly we've seen that with Spencer Rattler. Obviously Caleb Williams, maybe a different story, but other guys moving on and going to play at other programs and stuff like that. And you're going to have that kind of turnover and everything like that with the transfer portal and with the opportunity these guys have to go do that. And so I'm never going to rip a kid or you're never going to find me on social media saying, oh yeah, I'm glad you left, or I'm good. No, man, if it's in the best interest of you and your family and whatever the case is there, hey, I wish you all the best. I'm still going to wear my crimson and cream and cheer, but I'm still going to be a fan of those guys who choose to go on to other programs. That's not a knock on them. That's not an indictment on them. That's just saying, hey, maybe it wasn't a right fit for you, but hey, wish you all the best and go do your thing elsewhere. So yeah, certainly not not opposed to that, because that happens all over college football more than people think. So.
And that's what people need to understand is I know people are freaking out and they're like, listen, fire Brent Venables. You have to be able to come in, and Brent Venables is going to have to change the culture of this program, because I know people don't want to admit it, but OU had and still has a culture problem, because the guy who we shall not name was letting players do whatever they wanted. He was a true quote unquote players coach, because whatever they wanted, he let them do, and he gave them. And if you watched the trends of Oklahoma throughout the past couple of years, what did we start to see? OU end up in really tight games that they should not be in. And you started seeing them lose more games and keep trending down and down and down. When they would go out of conference to play a big team, all of a sudden they weren't as competitive as they had been, right? This was bound to happen. And yeah, I'm glad it happens in BV's first year instead of 5 years or 3 years down the line.
Yeah.
So we have to get this out of the way now, and you have to be able to get the guys in the program that do not need to be there any longer out of there, whether that means they need to graduate or they need to hit the transfer portal. There's going to be some real come to Jesus moments with a lot of these players once the end of the season hits.
Well, and not so much that, as I think a lot of these players are maybe on their own deciding, hey, maybe this is not a spot or a situation that best suits me, and having those conversations with their families, with their moms and dads, and certain like that. That's not a knock. Like I said earlier, it's not a knock on them. It's just it's understanding, hey, I want to do what's best for my future. I want to do what's best for the program as a whole and for everybody. And that's showing a great deal of maturity when you can really examine, step back and say, and evaluate, how the year went, things like that. And for a lot of these young guys, I think they're going to have those conversations, and they're going to think about, hey, do I push forward? Do I stay here? And do I believe in this system? Do I want to play for Coach Venables and this staff, or do I want to try to move on somewhere else? And so certainly, with the pressure and with the expectations that fall on these kids, I think it falls on deaf ears sometimes when you tell people that. They're just like, oh no, they're quitters. They do, whatever that is. And that's not the case at all. It's simply a, hey, is it a right fit for me and my situation and what I see my future as? So, there's probably going to be some guys that are going to leave, and if that's the case, wish them the best.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this comment that Mike put in the comments. I'm still shaking my head as to why opposing teams can pick up fourth and whatever on us. This is part of the culture problem that I'm speaking of because, and I've seen it all year this year. When OU gives up a big play after they played a good series or a good couple downs, right? Or team decides to play fourth down, I see very specific guys. We're not going to mention names, but I see guys on the team. I see them on the field. Almost you can see it in their body language, like this, oh my gosh, which is the exact same thing that was going on when Lincoln Riley was here.
You said it.
It's like a psychological problem. Like a guy that goes to shoot a free throw and can't shoot a free throw, and then no matter how much he works, he's got to get through the psychological block in his head that he can hit the free throw. It's the same thing. When if I was an opposing coach, I'd do this every time to OU. I'd go out there and I'd line up every time on fourth down because I know that with a lot of those guys that were here in the Lincoln Riley era that had problems on defense, you can get in their heads with this exact method right here. Line up on fourth down, fourth and short, and run it every single time because you'll probably convert it 70% of the time.
Well, and that brings up another point. And Mike just put up another question. He asked your take on the Here we talked about this on our show earlier. The whole gambit of officiating and refereeing across the country as a whole. It's becoming its own epidemic, if you will, and something needs to change. And these referees, these officials need to be held accountable for stuff. They need to start getting suspended. They need to start getting fined. They need to start, having their pay cut because that is just one of many absolutely ridiculous calls over the last couple of weeks and this whole year that leaves you scratching your head because how in the world do you pick up a flag on a blatant targeting?
That was dangerous. That was a dangerous play.
Well, when they got together, the only discussion should have been, was it a targeting? And that's the only thing they should have been reviewing.
Which I do think it was targeting. He was
absolutely
a defenseless player.
And not only that, but like Dallas Turner in the Ole Miss game, coming off the ground after he sacks Jackson Dart and then pushing his head back down in the ground and nobody doing anything about it. You're trying to protect guys. You're trying to, put safety in the game and putting an emphasis on that. But then you're going to sit here and let these type of plays happen. There's got to be some accountability for these officials across the board and some of these conferences and presidents and people need to start, seriously holding some of these officials accountable.
And you said it. It's happened in other conferences, but this is happening more consistently to Oklahoma and Texas. I want to point that out because this is not just an Oklahoma problem. This is happening to Texas in this conference too. And Brett Yormark,
you get soft. Come on, buddy.
Brett, Brett Yormark, you are the new conference commissioner. Do something about it.
Hey,
because I get it. Everybody's pissed off that OU and Texas are leaving and taking all of this money with them, but this is becoming a little ridiculous, and it's becoming obvious what's going on. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny it at this point. It's obvious the Big 12 is letting the refs be a little bit softer on the calls with OU and Texas in terms of calling stuff in their favor.
Yeah.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's becoming obvious.
It is, but I think it's more of a problem that needs to be addressed across every single conference and across college football as a whole. That you need to get a hold of some of these commissioners across the country and the NCAA need to really seriously look at this in the offseason and figure out a solution for this and maybe take some games away from some of these officials that are trying to make money. So
what is I can't even get it out because this game is it frustrates me. Is there anything OU can take away from this game and realistically build on? Because I know Eric Gray has a 200-yard game, but we've known Eric Gray is good. I mean, is there anything that they can build on?
Eric Gray's favorite song right now is "Lean on Me." So, we're gonna have to do that. And I don't think a lot of people. And this is the only thing I'm really gonna say about Dylan Gabriel. yeah, Marvin Mims missed a wide open throw or missed a wide open catch, drops, whatever the case is. But Dylan Gabriel missed some throws and um, not as accurate as some people may think. Um, but yeah, Jeff Lebby and that offense is going to have to go back to the drawing board, and certainly there's problems on defense. I just want to see us progress in these next two games. More than anything, I want to win this week. I think that would do a lot for our confidence and our morale as Sooner fans, being the last home game and maybe the last time we'll play Oklahoma State in Norman. So go out with a bang there, and then go try to win one at Texas Tech to build momentum going into the offseason. But yeah, I think it's back to the drawing board, and I want to see guys going in there competing and making progress these last 2 weeks.
Here's what I want to see next week, and I know it's probably not realistic. And I want to get your thoughts on this. I want to see Ted's roof ass on the field next week and not in the effing booth, because he does not need to be calling plays at this point. I want to see BV calling the majority of those defensive plays next week, and I want to see Ted Roof on the field coaching the linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, can't hurt. So whatever they need to do, whatever adjustments they need to make this week, and yeah, like I said, I think it just goes into for me just seeing the progress and whatever that looks like, whatever BV and the coaching staff figure out to formulate some sort of a solution. These last two games, especially this week, I'd really love to see us play well and go in there and hammer Oklahoma State, regardless of if Spencer Sanders plays or not. I want to see us put it all together and have a dominant performance, and why not a game against your hated in-state rival to possibly finish up Bedlam in Norman. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, and you're right. It's going to be nice to be able to go out there and get a win versus Oklahoma State. This coaching staff needs to be able to go out there and coach like their life depends on it in this game. Not because you need to get bowl eligible, but because of the huge recruiting weekend this is. Like, I can't fathom how important this recruiting weekend is.
Yeah, you got guys like David Hicks and other guys coming in town. It's huge for that. That's a great point.
Yeah, and the 2024 class is huge. This is why I think BV needs to call plays. He needs to literally meet the recruits before and explain to all of them, I want you to see what a defense looks like here at Oklahoma when Bates and I are playing our best. When I'm calling it and Bates and I are in sync, because Ted Rook's not going to be calling the defense in this game. I want to see us come out and make a statement on the defensive side of the ball, even if we don't replicate that against Texas Tech, because it is very important that some of these 2024 recruits are able to see what BV is capable of. Here's the thing. These guys do not remember or have never seen BV at Oklahoma before. So they don't know about the great Oklahoma defenses that BV was putting out like what we know. So it is extremely vital and extremely important next week that they show out in all aspects of the game. In all aspects of the game. You leave everything out there on the field. You cannot lose to Oklahoma State, one, because OU fans are just going to butcher you because we lost last year. And I can't handle another year of having Oklahoma State fans be able to give it to me. But two, I think this is one of the biggest recruiting weekends that OU has on their schedule. You cannot lose to your rival with all the recruits that are going to be there.
Yeah, and especially it being one of the last times that we will play them for a while. So yeah, it's a big week, and it's good to not have a 11 a.m. kickoff too. So y'all, please show up, support Oklahoma, support the Sooners. I'll be there. PG will be there. We'd love to see you. Try to get together and chat a little bit, but yeah, stay behind this team. The sky is not falling, despite what everybody's thinking. BV and this staff is going to get things rolling, and may look a little different, may look different than what we know. But man, Sooner Nation, come out and pack the palace and let's go beat the Pokes.
Let's go beat them. If you guys haven't already, please go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button. It means a lot to me. Drew, tell them where they can find you.
Hey, you can find me on our YouTube channel, The Under Official Review Podcast. Just search that. You'll find it. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. My Twitter page at Coach_England1. Follow me. I'll follow back. Like us. Give us some subscribes. We're a new channel as well, too. We appreciate the feedback, the comments, everything like that. And, yeah, give us a listen. All of our stuff is on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. And, yeah, we love talking college football, any place, anytime. So, like always, thank you guys for listening, and thanks again, PG, for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's great having you, and I will link all of Drew's information down in the comments below. As he said it, OU fans, show out, be proud on Saturday. Let's show these recruits why they want to be here at Oklahoma. And let's go out there and get that win versus Oklahoma State, because regardless of how it is, Oklahoma State doesn't want to play us. And that's why the rivalry is not continuing when we move into the SEC. They can easily move that FCS game off their schedule every single year and put Oklahoma in that slot. They just don't want to do it. But thank you guys for tuning in. Please hit the like and the subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking about the show. Go ahead, check me out on Apple, Google, or Spotify. This will be going up there as well. So if there's anything that you missed, you can go ahead and you can check it out there.